Dishonesty is a learned habit. Some people learn to lie to get out of bad situations from a very young age. They lie to themselves, their family, and friends, and eventually it becomes the first instinct. They end up lying about the smallest things, and it becomes hard to tell the truth in all kinds of relationships. And even long after relationships have ended, it actually starts to feel wrong to tell the truth. For others, a little white lie may become the starting point for a range of excuses, where people begin to believe their own words. If you hear something often enough, it becomes truth, because the alternative is realizing how bad of a person or situation has become, and no one wants to think they're a bad person. It may seem innocent at first, and you may just call it an oversight, an unintentional mistake, or a temporary lapse of judgment. But trust is fragile, and it always has been. Geddy Lee and the band Rush wrote a beautiful song back in 2012 called The Garden, and it goes something like this. The measure of a life is a measure of love and respect. So hard to earn, so easily burned. In the fullness of time, a garden to nurture and protect. Dishonesty jeopardizes trust and can damage us in our relationships, sometimes beyond repair. And this is closely tied with respect. If you respect someone, you must work hard to gain and keep their trust. We all tell white lies from time to time. We say, I'm fine, when we're not, compliment unwanted gifts, or even fib that the check is in the mail. But in intimate relationships, emotional honesty includes allowing our partner to know who we really are. Darlene Lancer, a licensed marriage and family therapist, states that honesty is about more than simply not lying. Dishonesty includes making ambiguous or vague statements, telling half-truths, manipulating information through emphasis, exaggeration, or minimization, and withholding feelings or keeping important information. It affects the relationship and deprives the other person of freedom of choice and informed action. Although we may consider ourselves relatively honest, few of us reveal all of our negative thoughts and feelings about the people we are close to. It requires courage to be fully vulnerable and authentic. Most people who lie worry about the risks of being honest, but give little thought to the risks of dishonesty. Opinions vary on how much truth others need to know. While this may be true to some extent, what may seem innocuous and not worth the effort of disclosure could be sending the wrong signals to your partner. Sometimes people just like to be private and don't feel it's necessary to tell their significant other every little detail of every little thing they do. Some people just consider full disclosure about everything rather annoying. Who cares anyway, right? But what about bigger things? Norms change over time. Homosexuality and transsexuality, once taboos, are now openly accepted and discussed. Although having unmarried parents, for example, or being adopted were once kept secret and only revealed when the child was older. Such revelations could be traumatic, yet also explains confusion in a child's mind. Each case of dishonest behavior in a partner should be scrutinized for a level of severity. The potential damage and complications that surround lying, as well as disclosure, are things to consider when telling lies and keeping secrets. Consequences of our actions to ourselves, loved ones, and relationships requires a degree of self-awareness and can prevent unnecessary suffering if it's considered harmful enough. When a truth comes out, it's often enlightening. It can help the other person make sense of previously unexplained or confusing behavior. At the same time, it can be devastating and traumatic to discover that the one we loved and trusted has betrayed us. This is obvious in the case of infidelity. It can shatter the image we have of our partner, as well as confidence in ourselves and even reality itself. Unfortunately, victims of betrayal frequently blame themselves. If the relationship wasn't working, both partners have a responsibility to speak up and address problems. Although it may be fruitful to examine our behavior in order to learn from it, we're never responsible for someone else's actions or omissions. There's a natural desire to seek explanations and know more facts. Aggrieved partners begin to review details of prior events and conversations, seeking overlooked clues and evidence of lies. They may painfully conclude that they and their partner have been living in two very different realities, which they once believed were shared. If the relationship ends, both partners may suffer from shame and blame, which compounds grief. Even if the relationship survives, there's loss when trust is broken. As with all losses, our first reaction is denial, if not of the facts, then of the severity of the impact. It may take time to accept the truth. Each of us will attribute a different meaning to the facts in order to heal and make peace with ourselves, our loved ones, and a disordered reality we once thought was safe and predictable. But general and occasional dishonesty without harmful intentions is another thing altogether, and it may stem from something way back in our past. Understanding fear of abandonment is an important connection to consider when explaining dishonest thinking and behavior. According to researchers Elisa Fritcher and Stephen Gans, a fear of abandonment is a complex phenomenon that can stem from a variety of developmental experiences, including loss or trauma. This fear has been studied from a variety of perspectives. Theories behind why fear of abandonment occurs include interruptions in the normal development of certain cognitive and emotional capabilities, challenges with past relationships, and other problematic social and life experiences. Although it's not an official phobia, the fear of abandonment is arguably one of the most common and most damaging fears of all. People with fear of abandonment may tend to display behaviors and thought patterns that affect their relationships. Ultimately, maladaptive coping with this fear can result in the abandonment they dread becoming a reality. Understanding fear of abandonment is the first step toward resolving it. Our behaviors and actions in current relationships are all thought to be the result of old fears and learned concepts that take place in childhood. There are many theories that attempt to understand this. Heavily connected to this is the fear of ridicule, fear of embarrassment, and fear of rejection or disapproval for showing interest or passion in a personal idea, project, or pursuit, and having those closest to us not share the same level of enthusiasm or support. This can result in feeling crushed and devastated inside, especially if it involves a large investment of time, energy, attention, resources, or money to go after something we love. This may be due to a parent, teacher, or guardian not allowing or supporting our most valued and treasured pursuits in sports, hobbies, vocation, or growth opportunities at a young age. This is also related to the concept of FOMO, fear of missing out. To understand this better, let's take a look at object relations theory. An offshoot of Freudian analysis, an object in one's mind is either a person, a part of a person, or something that somehow symbolizes one or the other. Object constancy is the concept that even when we are not in the physical presence of that person, our experience of them does not fundamentally change. This is related to the idea of object permanence, first studied by the developmental psychologist Jean Piaget. Infants learn that objects continue to exist when they are not experienced directly. Object constancy, on the other hand, generally develops before the age of 3. As children grow and mature, the periods of separation lengthen and are often generated by the child as he goes to school or spends time in a friend's house. We learn that important relationships are not damaged by time apart. Object constancy may be interrupted or disrupted by traumatic events. Death or divorce are common causes, but even situations that seem relatively unimportant to the adults involved may affect developing this critical understanding. For example, children with parents in the military, those whose parents have little time to spend with them, and those with neglectful or disapproving parents may also be at risk for interrupted object constancy. Dishonest behavior is a natural way of dealing with hurt, and it can be used as a way to guard what we truly value and hold dear to us. Mythology is filled with stories of abandoned or rejected lovers, particularly women who dedicate their entire selves to their partners only to be left behind when the lover goes off to conquer the world. Some psychologists, such as Carl Jung, argue that these myths and legends have become part of our collective unconscious. At some primal level, we have internalized certain archetypes and stories and made them part of our shared worldview. We each have a personal myth as well, one that is not shared with others, but resides deep within the core of our beings. According to Jung, this personal myth is made up of our interpretations of the collective unconscious through the filters of our own experiences. From this perspective, the fear of abandonment is connected to these universal myths, but varies in severity according to our own personal memories. By the time we are adults, most of us have been through some significant changes: the death of a loved one, a friend moving away, a relationship ending, a transition from high school to college to marriage and parenthood. Although most of us adapt to changing circumstances, it is not uncommon to get stuck in the process of grieving what was or what it could have been in the past. If you have been through a sudden and traumatic abandonment, such as losing someone to violence or tragedy, you may be at increased risk for developing this fear. Millions of people struggle with fear. In fact, nearly 10% of people in the US have some sort of phobia. When it comes to relationships, the resulting behaviors from fear of abandonment can potentially include failing to fully commit to long-term relationships, moving on quickly to ensure you don't get too attached, staying in relationships no matter how unhealthy they are, struggling with being hard to please and nitpicky, having difficulty experiencing emotional intimacy, feeling insecure and unworthy of love. The fear of abandonment is highly personalized. Some people are solely afraid of losing a romantic partner. Others fear abandonment of other relationships. To better understand how individuals with fear of abandonment may navigate a relationship, here's an example of how a typical relationship may start and evolve. This example is especially true for romantic partnerships. Getting to know each other feels relatively safe. You are not yet emotionally invested in the other person, so you continue to live your life while enjoying time with your chosen person. The honeymoon phase occurs when you make the choice to commit. You're willing to overlook possible red or yellow flags because you just get along so well. You start spending a great deal of time with the other person, and you always enjoy yourself. You start to feel secure. The real relationship is when you decide to fully commit. The honeymoon phase can't last forever. No matter how well two people get along, real life always intervenes. People get sick, have family problems, start working difficult hours, worry about money, and need time to get things done. Although this is a very normal and positive step in a relationship, it can be terrifying for those with a fear of abandonment who may see it as a sign that the other person is pulling away. If you have this fear, you're probably battling with yourself and trying very hard not to express your worries for fear of appearing clingy. People are human. They have moods and things on their minds. We're extremely complex. Regardless of how much they care for someone else, they cannot and should not be expected to always have that person at the forefront of their minds. Especially once the honeymoon period is over, it's inevitable that one partner may feel brushed off. This often takes the form of an unanswered text message, an unreturned phone call, or a request for a few days of alone time. For those with fear of abandonment, this is a turning point. If you have this fear, you are probably completely convinced that the brush off is a sign that your partner no longer loves you. What happens next is almost entirely determined by the fear of abandonment. Some people handle this by becoming clingy and demanding, insisting that their spouse prove their love by jumping through hoops. Others run away, rejecting their partners before they are rejected. Still, others feel that the brush off is their fault and attempt to transform themselves into the perfect partner. In reality, a brush off is most likely not a brush off at all. Simply put, people sometimes just do things that their partners don't understand. It's not good or bad, it just is. In a healthy relationship, the partner may recognize the situation for what it is, a normal reaction that has little or nothing to do with the relationship. Or they may feel upset by it and address it by either a calm discussion or a brief argument. Either way, a single perceived brush-off does not need to be a dominating influence on the partner's feelings. Similar to phobias, it's impossible to simply talk or reason someone out of fear of abandonment. No matter how many times your partner tries to reassure you, it will simply not be enough. Eventually, your behavior patterns and inconsolable reactions may drive your partner away, leading to the very conclusion that you fear most. If your fear is mild and well controlled, you may be able to handle it simply by becoming educated about your tendencies and learning new behavior strategies. For most people, though, the fear of abandonment is rooted in deep-seated issues that are difficult to unravel alone. Professional assistance may be required to work through this fear and truly change your thoughts and behaviors. Although treating the fear itself is critical, it is also essential to build a feeling of belonging. Rather than focusing all of your energy and devotion on a single partner, focus on building a community. No one person can solve all of our problems or meet all of our needs, but a solid group of several close friends can each play an important part in our lives. Many people with fear of abandonment state that they never felt like they had a tribe or a pack when they were growing up. For whatever reasons, they always felt disconnected from those around them. But the good news is that it's never too late. Whatever your current stage of life, it's important to surround yourself with other like-minded individuals. Make a list of your current hobbies, passions, and dreams. Then find others who share your interests. It may not be your partner, and that's okay. We all need room to breathe and do what we need to do to feel fulfilled. While it's true that not everyone who shares an interest will become a close friend, hobbies and dreams are an excellent stepping stone toward building a solid support network. Working on your passions also helps build self-confidence and the belief that you are strong enough to cope with whatever life throws your way. This can certainly help with fears of abandonment, ridicule, embarrassment, and rejection, and in turn reduce or eliminate self-sabotaging thinking and behaviors of dishonesty, which allows us to focus more on honesty with ourselves and others and gives us true emotional intelligence. Take care of yourself and take care of each other.